Hello, everybody. Today we're taking a closer look at Allied strategies for A&A Pacific 1940 that came out in 2009. Setup is the eastern half of the Global Edition map. Specifically, I want to cover U.S. gameplay strategy using the AAA platform. I really enjoy the detailed treatment the Pacific Theater gets with these grand scale classic mini area control board games. Unfortunately, once these are all set up on the table, at first glance, they can look like a confusing mess. I remember the first time I saw the original A&A Pacific from 2001 set up in real life. I thought that too. Anyway, that's why I'm going to use a computer version here so you can clearly see everything that is going on. With this video, I hope to showcase my favorite entry-level winning strategy meant for rookie allied players so that they can challenge any veteran A&A players of Japan in person on a physical game board. That's always the best way to play. Some guys paint up their minis and everything. You can see some pictures of these painted sets on BGG. They look completely awesome. I'm jealous. Anyway, I'm only controlling the US here. Everything else is run by the AI on the highest difficulty setting. So I want to show something that I don't think is really a game hack or an attempt to debunk anyone online that believes they know the ultimate strategy for Japan that can't be beat and stuff like that. All I want to do is demonstrate one possible way to play America that is sensible and relatively easy to understand in a broad sense. So, therefore, I think it's probably the best suited strategy for newer players. And oh, by the way, good luck trying to stop this. If you're playing Japan, I guess you're just going to cry after you see this. Anyway, to summarize the grand strategy, it's going to appear painfully obvious on the surface. It's going to look like constant and relentless pressure in the direction of Borneo, Java, the Celebes, and Sumatra. And that's all good and well, but just knowing what you have to do is one thing, and actually executing it requires quite a bit of savvy. It's like saying, I'm going to become a millionaire trading penny stocks. I'll just buy the symbols that are spiking up and I'll use tight stop losses. What could go wrong? Well, greed and everything else that makes you human, I guess, like emotions and poor judgment and all that. So, what are we doing here? I'll take a procedural turn by turn approach to explain what I call the ports of call ladder attack. And I argue this grand strategy is the most insidious because it turns Japanese combat effectiveness in China and India into a slow death trap. Most experienced Japanese players really take pride in their ability to subdue China and then conquer India in a shockingly short period of time. Well, we're not going to really dispute these claims with this strategy. We are simply going to slam the door shut behind them and then throw away the key, resulting in a slow death for Japan if they are top tier players, or a fast death if they are reckless. So, this ladder refers to the rungs, and the first one is Hawaii, and the second rung of the ladder is the Caroline Islands, and the third rung is the Philippines. And the reason why you choose these three destinations to climb is obviously because they have the port, and that gives you the extra movement bonus and gives you the most options. So you never want to stray too far from this corridor that takes you closer to the east coast of China. And really, you never really want to drop off this route except for two situations. One is to, at the end of the game, if you have an opportunity to deliver just like a devastating blow to the Japanese from which they can't possibly recover, then obviously you would make that switch. Or if you can pick off an island, like say Iwo Jima, early in the game and there's absolutely no chance of the Japanese counterattacking you, then it might be acceptable for one brief turn to split up your fleet and do something like that. But as long as you form your fleet back up into one super huge task force, um, something like that is acceptable. So, as far as buying strategy, it's just exactly what the Americans did in real life almost. You want to buy carriers and have them fully equipped with fighters, not the attack bombers. And you keep doing this every turn. Every turn at the start of the game is at least one carrier and two fighters. You do this until I think the bare minimum is probably five carriers. I know it seems excessive, but you want to have built before you take truly offensive measures in the South Pacific a navy that is just truly unapproachable. And like I said, maybe seven carriers is probably more than you need. I'd say like six carriers as a centerpiece of your one giant task force. And with this, you can do almost anything. And another rule of thumb is that with this task force, you also never really have to initiate an attack on the Japanese. It's truly acceptable and devastating to just simply move this fleet around to protect your transports and create situations where you actually lever the Japanese to attack you. Like, always have the burden of attack resting on the Japanese fleet because your ships, when they're all massed together, defend much better than they attack, just statistically, because you have the greater defense factor of the carriers and your fighters as well. So always have the Japanese shoulder the burden of attacking this like unassailable fleet that can protect all of your transport movements. So we'll take a closer look at the map here and just talk specifically about what I'm doing. So you can see by turn 3, the AI is playing Japan well. You know, it is going after the big money islands in the South Pacific, as well as making huge gains in mainland China, headed towards India, which is something that every experienced human player will do. Lots of aircraft. You know, also building up their defensive forces on Japan. Pretty much doing everything that you're going to typically see a human player do here. And you can see I've just grabbed Iwo Jima there because it has, I'm really not under any threat of a counterattack. That does also trigger the Japanese kamikaze tokens, and I feel that that's okay to do early in the game. I know there's some school of thought that says, you know, you just avoid that situation until a late game. But I mean, I'd rather have to sort of deal with that at the beginning. Maybe get the Japanese to waste those tokens earlier as opposed to later. But with this latter sort of strategy, you'll see that it doesn't really matter anyways. So right now I'm already up by turn three. I have what, one, two, three, four aircraft carriers, lots of planes. The U.S. Pacific Fleet is still not quite ready to advance to the Caroline Islands, which is the second rung of the ladder. Um, Many people will probably say that this strategy is too passive, uh, but you'll see it's worth it to do this, to just create this super task force while the Japanese are preoccupied with a land campaign in Southeast Asia that requires them to continuously replenish infantry and armor losses and stuff like that. They can't possibly uh, make tremendous progress over land um, without spending a lot of money on ground forces. They can't match your incredible building of ships. So you just sort of exploit that horrible dilemma the Japanese face right at the beginning of the game. They still have a gigantic air force, but it's deep in China. Um, they're moving as fast as they can, really, in China. You can see India's fairly well defended, 18 British divisions in Burma now. The difficult thing about playing this version of ANA, the way I'm doing it, is your Anzac allies. If you let the AI control it, they just are useless stooges. They don't do much of anything. They may come in and reinforce islands and stuff that you take, but really, the computer is fairly weak with that aspect of the game that I've seen so far. A human player will be much better, so I am kind of at a disadvantage by letting the AI control some of my minor allies, I find. But now look at the size of my navy here, and you can see the Japanese have a lot of the islands now. Dutch East Indies, they have 3 carriers in that task force. Um, let's see. You take the Marianas here. I don't think it is vulnerable to. Well, I can spend 1 transport, I guess. Maybe the Japanese will waste a kamikaze token on it. That's what I'm hoping. But you can't sort of underestimate the importance of all these little islands. I think the game does like a really good job of I don't know, simulating like how important each and every one of these little islands are, especially for your airplanes to land. And of course, the 3 main island groups are the ones you really want to concentrate on. Like I said before, the ones with ports. Never stray too far from Hawaii, Carolina, or the Philippines. And if you do, it better be to take all of the big money islands like Borneo and Java and Sumatra, or do something equally devastating. You save that one huge power move for just the right time, and you'll know when the right time is. I argue, though, it should never be used up to initiate a gigantic naval confrontation with the Japanese. That's what they want. The Americans to do that, but your fleet is so strong defending. You really don't have to do that. let the Japanese make that fateful move. Sort of like what they did in real life at Midway. It's a lot different when you know an attack is coming and you're prepared for it. They had a lot of success at the beginning of the war attacking by surprise, but when you can see it coming, it's a lot different. It's a lot harder. So by turn 5, China is really pushed back. There's not much you can do about it against AI or experienced. Yeah, this is into Yunnan here. So we see by turn 5, it looks like China's snuffed out for now, and it looks terrible. And most Japanese players by this point are super confident. But the thing is, China comes back. You can take those territories back eventually. It's not out of the game permanently yet with this strategy. As long as you have what you see here off the coast of Hawaii, anything's possible. The only thing the Japanese can do really is just brace for impact when they see this thing coming. 6 aircraft carriers. I don't have like a very big surface fleet. You also shouldn't neglect the cruisers and destroyers as well. But that comes after you have that core mass of fully equipped carriers. Like I said, 6 is probably the minimum. 7, yeah, but the longer it takes to get this thing wound up and rolling, the sort of worse position the Americans will be in when the time comes. So I think maybe, yeah, you wait until you have about 6 carriers and then make the move to the Caroline Islands. It has a port, so from there you can do a lot of different things. You can reach a lot of different areas of the South Pacific and keep the Japanese player always guessing. You can see now I'm switching over to transports because I have that gigantic task force there in advance. Caroline Islands falls without a fight. But Japanese AI did well. It took the Philippines, took, everything it should so far. I don't think anyone can really argue that it's played poorly yet. And now here comes the big battle in India. You can see the Anzacs really aren't helpful at all. But it's really important that the Japanese never approach that part of the map. You have to be in a position to make a power move right as India is about to fall. Because that is when the Japanese player is going to be at its most vulnerable, because it's going to have to expend a lot of effort and IPCs just to take out India. And as soon as that happens, they have to face like the biggest navy on the face of the earth. And it's beyond their ability. Even with all of China and India, as long as the Americans have the big islands, they will have a larger economy. than the Japanese, even after taking all of China and India, as long as America has the Philippines, Celebes, Borneo, Java, Sumatra, and navy that is unrivaled in size and power. It's what you want to see if you're the Americans. Have bombers still there in Wake Island. You move those up. So there we go. We have MacArthur returning to the Philippines. It has a port from there. What's next? Well, that's up to the American player. The Japanese don't have a say in it. More planes coming. Another common thing that a lot of players of America will do that I don't think is advisable at the beginning of the game is to, because you have so much money, it's easy to become reckless with spending, and oftentimes that is um, money is wasted with tons of bombers, and you have to time that correctly. Yes, you can buy a lot of bombers, but I argue not before you have built a giant navy like the one you see here. And then I just got hit with the kamikazes. So that's sort of a kick in the pants that you just have to take. Um, but you're prepared for it. I will have that carrier fixed. They actually didn't get very good results there, but like the Japanese player should actually probably should have done that because they know that I can do anything from the Philippines. What do I want to do? Where am I going? I mean, it could be right into Manchuria, Korea. It could be going against those big islands. Philippines is a great strategic location. And I argue that even though it's worth less IPCs, it should probably be taken first before you take back some of the big islands. The big islands don't have ports, so you can kind of slow yourself, get bogged down in there without that extra movement. Um, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, the bomber thing. I say you shouldn't spend a lot of money on bombers with America until you're probably well, I would say until you have those four big islands and you create a condition where it's almost impossible for Japan to grow even after they have taken India. You have to have them locked into that part of the map there. And then once you have maybe one big battle with the Japanese Navy where they take a lot of losses and it's obvious that they'll just never be able to rival you on the seas, I think it would be then acceptable to start buying bombers, but certainly not before. Your initial, like it's round seven, they still haven't taken India, but they will. But I've spent like 5, 6 turns building up my navy, and Japan can't do the same. So, like, what? I don't see how they can ever make up that ground as long as I keep. Uh, I mean, every turn I'm buying something dangerous that can augment my already huge navy. Pacific Fleet here, now stationed off the Philippines. Another common thing that American players might do from this point is attack into Manchuria or Korea. I think that is a mistake, honestly. It's one option. Obviously, they're worth a lot of IPCs, but I argue the game is won and lost in Borneo, Celeb, Sumatra, and Java. They are farther away from Japan, and they are difficult for the Japanese to fight over, expensive too, because it requires a whole bunch of ships, and you have to go through my navy, and that's not going to be easy. So, there'll be a lot of losses taking India, and in the very next turn, they're going to be faced with the horrible sight of American aircraft carriers and battleships right in their face. And you can see in the Philippines, you can take, well, I guess with the port bonus, all of the big money islands from there. I don't really like to use like the suicide sort of transports, the one way sort of trip for the transports, but um, it is sort of a good trap because the hopefully it will bring the Japanese Navy out to play, so to speak, and outside the cover of their land-based aircraft. So we'll see what happens, though. I'm not sure what they'll do from here. It's bad though. This is although it looks impressive what the Japanese have accomplished. Any human player that is in this position as the Japanese is in gigantic trouble. They just don't realize it. Because after I take all these islands, I'll have more money. I'll be making more money than the Japanese, and I'll have a gigantic navy that really can't be approached easily. And I can certainly maneuver it into areas that basically will force the Japanese to attack it at a disadvantage. I really like how in this version too the airports allow land-based aircraft to scramble to defend the surrounding water. I really like that. That's cool. So still have remnants of the Royal Navy south of Java and Sumatra. So by round 8, the Japanese are poised to take out India, and That's going to be the extent of the expansion of the whatever they called it, the Southeast Asian prosperity sphere. It's going to be almost all downhill from here. Slow, like I said, a slow, suffocating death because they just make less than I do from this point. So, where will I go with the Americans? You have to sort of entice the Japanese out of their defensive shell. And you can do this by taking bites out of the eastern coast of China. The best option is probably Kwangtung with a port, or if they build any factories there, Kiangsu and stuff. But we'll see if we can get a response from the Japanese. I think it is important too to pick off all of the islands because that limits the Japanese options with their air power, their range and stuff. All of them should go down. But you can see any move I make like this, I make sure that it's kind of outside the range of the bulk of the Japanese Air Force. I want them to break up their navy in their planes. And you're free to start the strategic air offensive against Japan at this point too. Like I said, this only comes after you have a gigantic fleet parked in the Philippines with at least 6 aircraft carriers, and you have a stranglehold over those 4 big islands. I would not be wasting money on bombers before that. This right here is probably the worst case scenario for the Japanese, even though it looks like they're doing really well. Kiangsu is gone now. That wasn't very good results over in Malaya. Now the Japanese will be able to counter any type of incursion into China, coastal China, but honestly, that's what they're reduced to for the remainder of the game. Even local counterattacks, any sort of grand scale expansion is over now. Like I said, there's a disparity in IPC totals at this point, and they no longer have any way to sort of close that gap, even after India falls. I have the initiative. As crazy as it seems, it's the truth. I have the gigantic navy and more money. So I get to decide how the rest of the game plays out. It's such a terrible dilemma for the Japanese player. And so we see now, yeah, that was snuffed out. But I can keep doing that. Probably should have. I mean, that wasn't very efficient. I admit that wasn't that impressive. But the point is, I got the IPCs from it for one turn, and that breaks down the Japanese economy slowly. Those type of moves over and over and over again. What can they do to stop it? Nothing at this point, unless they want to spend their entire air force and navy to confront me on the oceans, and then I will simply restart the process again, climbing those rungs of the ladder one at a time, rebuilding my navy and following that corridor straight to the shores of China. Because they're not going to take down my navy without a tremendous cost to their own forces. So we can make a big power move here. Only this time, they're not going to be able to take it back because they don't have enough stuff close to Kiangsu. I will probably be attacked by a ton of aircraft, but that's costly for the Japanese. All of those units are expensive. Although a lot of the bulk of their air force is deployed close to India. This type of constant pressure will overload the Japanese ability to defend its empire. It just everything will collapse here. Yeah. So they have no ground forces within range. Sadly, I can't build there because it's Chinese territory. But guess what? You're going to see Chinese infantry pop up again. So China's never really out of this game. Well, it was for a couple turns only, but it's right back in the mix now. A lot of other people will argue for a strong move into Manchuria and Korea, so you can build a factory. I think it's the only place where you can actually build a large factory. But like I said, the timing of that is important. I say it shouldn't happen before you have totally locked down the big islands. It's just too hard to hold, and you're so close to Japan's center of power. So here goes India. Wow! See, look at the casualties the Japanese took there. But they did take India. but the cost is too high. Look at my income is 93. That's way more than I think Japan maxes. If they take out China and India, they are around 68 or 70. So that's a 20 IPC difference every turn. That's one battleship. That's and over the long haul that makes a huge difference. And you can see I can explode out of the Kingsu beachhead. It's temporary. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to hold this, but these type of moves further chip away at Japan. Bomb Malaya. Really should probably be bombing the port so their navy can't move that far. But we'll just guess we'll just do the factory here. More stuff coming. I really like too from the Carolines. You can take that tall sea zone, and you can reach pretty far north up the coast of China in 3 moves. It's actually pretty surprising how far you can get. Up to Shantung. Well, even Manchuria you could do. That's a big sea zone around Okinawa. And you just keep this corridor open and have like a unending flow of transports, men, tanks, everything. So that's why I don't know, I call it the ladder. There are like I admit though, there's other ways to approach U.S. gameplay, um, but I still think this is probably the easiest strategy to understand. But it does require discipline because there's so many pitfalls and sort of traps that the Japanese player can lay. Like you can fall into the trap of attacking like a splinter task force of the Japanese, like a small portion of the Navy, only to be counterattacked by all their land based aircraft and the remaining uh, portion of the Japanese fleet. And then that could sort of set you back. And you'd have to start the whole process over again. And by that time, the Japanese would have the big 4 islands, and then you would have more of a balance in economy. So that would be a one way for the Japanese to get back in the game. But with discipline, you don't allow that to happen. You force the Japanese into that first move. It's like an impossible battle. So hopefully I can get some more Chinese unit. There we go. Wow. Couple, but they all add up. You like to see it. I love watching them reappear on the map. And the best contribution the Anzacs make at this point is they can just reinforce weak spots, empty empty islands or newly conquered territories. They do play a useful role. It's just, like I said before, the AI is just a complete stooge with the Anzacs. It's not. It doesn't help me demonstrating this strategy. Um, so here we go. We have the big Japanese counterattack. But it's costly for both sides. And they didn't take everything back. And now they've left sort of hanging transports and stuff like that you can pick off. They have a divided fleet, which is a juicy target. Uh, Huge economy though for America, over almost 100. Japan would probably be around 70. So so if you're ever at this point in a head-to-head game, live opposed, physical game board, you can be fairly certain that this is a hopeless situation for Japan already, even though it doesn't look like it. Um, it's true. You can see. Let's look at the. Yeah, they're at 50. I'm at like 90. Wow, it's even worse than I thought. So at some point, the Japanese players soon will have to make a move because continuing to play at with such a disadvantage in income is, there's only one outcome. So they have to do something. They have to, and that something is to attack your big navy at unfavorable odds. What else is there is there for them to do? And just pick off all of these units on the coast. I can replace aircraft losses. I have like a bunch of them in the Philippines just waiting. So another big push into China. You could take that transport. Keep climbing that ladder. Hawaii, Caroline Islands, Philippines. When you're off that island chain, that's when your navy is most vulnerable. But you almost want the Japanese to attack you at this point because it will cost them the bulk of their air force, and that's not going to be replaceable easily, especially when they're down on IPC total to begin with. To me, I can replace stuff more easily than they can. So, bigger chunk of China, though, is now fallen. So even though the Japanese are likely to counterattack all of these coastal territories and take them back, you just keep on doing this ad nauseum. And then maybe one turn you can save um, some units, and instead of landing in either Kiangsu or Shantung, Kiangsi, you make a hard right hand turn and jump Manchuria, especially if the Japanese have a factory there. And yeah, that's an even worse situation for the Japanese player because they can't know where you're going to be all the time. They actually have a huge concentration of aircraft up there, so I expect to be attacked. Um, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. That can do some serious damage, but that's okay. I can replace my losses better than they can. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. I'm thinking that I'll be attacked here. I still have a lot. I have 11 fighters. Like that's not going to do terrible damage to their air force. I really should take Formosa and Okinawa too. That's just annoying to have to leave them like that. Let's see. What does Japan do? I'll be surprised if they don't attack my navy at some. Oh no! I took a lot of damage there, but lost some planes. And they're making a move into the big island chain, but I have 100 IPCs to spend every turn, so we'll see what we can do about that. I think about building a large surface fleet to augment my carriers. This is an interesting dilemma, actually. I mean, I still have the initiative. I get to decide what happens next year. And I noticed they don't have that many ground units protecting the Air Force in Manchuria. I can get there with a lot of stuff from far away. And if I do take this territory, it knocks out the Japanese ability to produce on mainland China in the whole north. And then I will be able to have my own factory in Korea. So we're really at the same place that we were even 6 turns ago, except now I can build ground units, 10 of them, eventually, right in China. So business in Japan just took a turn for the worse. I expect to lose a lot here, but if this falls, they can't take it back, so it's worth it. Six. I gotta get into those planes. It was costly, but I just need to land with one unit, and it's worth it. And I took it barely. There you go. That's not good for Japan, honestly. Now I expect to be counterattacked. The Navy. This is a good opportunity for the Japanese to use whatever aircraft left to attack my Navy off the coast of Okinawa, because my Air Force is depleted now. But at least the transports will get away, or half of them. Yeah, this is actually a trap for the Japanese, because I want them to spend more units attacking my Navy, which will give me more of an opportunity to build and expand in northern China. And I have the money. I can just replace the Navy faster and better than the Japanese can replace their losses. So I've invested a lot into this northern push. So I may as well just go with it for now. Yeah, this is what I thought would happen. Took a huge number of hits there, but I should be able to. Destroyed all their aircraft except the bombers. But you may think, right there, that was a turning point for the Japanese. But remember, I'm going to have a factory in northern China now, and I can restart the whole process of The latter attack, again, the only difference is I'll have the ability to build ground units right into China. You'll see what I mean here. With those type of losses, I mean, the Japanese are really sort of limited. Like even if they take back the big islands in the South Pacific, the difference is I still have a factory in China, and I can restart that whole process again. Carriers every turn coming from Hawaii to Caroline to the Philippines. It's going to be so much cheaper to fight the battle in China now. I don't have to buy transports anymore. So all my money will just be going to, well, at least half of my income, which is almost equivalent to the entire income of Japan, will be just spent on, you know, aircraft carrier, two fighters, aircraft carrier, two fighters every turn from now on. And then maybe the 10 units that I put in China after I have those factories going would be like maybe five tanks and five mechanized infantry every single turn. 4 battleships. That's no joke. I mean, Japan, I did take a terrible loss with my navy, but Japan has no ability to deploy in all of northern China at the moment at all. Both of their factories are gone. In fact, they have to come up from Malaya and India. So that's not going to look good. So I think the main point in all of this is that a lot of people underestimate the potential of America in this game, even after India and China falls. As long as you maintain a gigantic navy with at least 6 aircraft carriers, it's too expensive for the Japanese to defeat, especially after they're exhausted from fighting that big war in China and India. There's no way that they'll be able to take all of that and the 4 big money islands in the South Pacific. And as long as you hold them, you will have more money than the Japanese player. And if they attack your navy like they did here, I will still have more money and potentially the ability to build right into China from the north. It takes a terrible toll on the Japanese to defeat that navy. You can't forget that. Like, they're doing it with a weaker economy, so they're always going to be at a disadvantage, no matter what they do. See, like it may appear like the Allies are on the ropes here, but it's just not true. Japan is getting weaker. I think they have like $69 or something as an income, and you saw that I was over 100. Now it's actually even, but the strategic situation has altered in a sense that I will have the ability to produce in northern China, and I still have the economy to rebuild my navy. So it's not easy for sure. It's a back and forth, and it will always be sort of a back and forth struggle with the limitation of, you know, Japan's strategic, situation. They just will not be able to rival me in production, and I'm really don't feel threatened by anything that they can do from a strategic point of view, like a grand sort of picture. It's a losing struggle for the Japanese to hold China at this point. For the American player here, all they have to do is protect Korea in the effort to build a major factory up there. So you can be quite defensive in that part of the map while you retake the big islands in the south. Yeah, see, the Japanese are so thin on that part of the map. It's just uh, it's not a good thing to see for them, especially when Chinese infantry are going to be deployed just when you thought you had that part of the map secured and China was out of the game. Well, look who's back. Oh, there's some sort of notification. Anyway. See how these territories are no longer instantly counterattacked. In fact, China is mainly wide open now. Here comes the reformed American Pacific Fleet. Wow. So Japan has to spend money on ground forces at this point, where I have to, well, I can basically do both. I could divide up by buying on land units that I don't have to pay money to transport anymore, and the rest is just naval units. You don't see any Japanese fighters anymore. That's interesting. Still have good bombers, a very large fleet of bombers, but only one. So you can see the cracks starting to appear in the Japanese war machine. Their navy is actually divided and beaten up as well as mine. So, but here comes the, yeah, where a lot of the map is going to turn purple here. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. These, yeah, I can just run over the submarines. I'll take the Philippines back. That surface fleet could be potentially destroyed, but I guess that's acceptable if gigantic chunks of China are retaken by the Allies. I'll make that trade. I think I should be able to take one more. Or two. Okay, Japan's melting here. These will go to the Carolines. So with this strategy, I can say with like a high degree of confidence that, I mean, if you play this way and you are relatively new to Axis and Allies Pacific, and you're playing someone who has a lot of experience with Japan, you're not going to be run over. You have nothing to worry about. Like, this is extremely tough look for any player of Japan. It's just, like I said, it's not a game hack or anything. Of course, with the amount of dice rolling, I mean, anything can happen, but you will definitely be presenting the Japanese player with like truly horrible strategic dilemmas really right from the beginning. They won't realize it until probably after they have taken India, and they see a ginormous American Navy waiting for them in the Pacific, with a whole bunch of loaded transports ready to counterattack. And then they realize they don't even make that much money. Like the Allies still have the ability to outspend them. And remember, they're going to be weakened from all the fighting that they had to do overland in China. Well, America's still fresh at that point. So you now have like a major factory in Korea. So, yeah, at this point, the Americans really, they don't have anything to worry about. It's just a slog. And like I said before, it's just the Japanese player is reduced to only being able to pull off strong local counterattacks, like set piece little um, counter pushes, but nothing on a grand scale. There's certainly no large scale strategic moves with any sort of ability or threat to turn the tide anymore. I mean, that can't happen unless you make more money, really, than your opponent in this game. I mean, surely the priority is to recapture China, but that's expensive, and I'm going to be building up a huge navy while they do that. Yeah, see, the surface fleet got crushed. Um, you don't like to see it, but look at China. It's worth it. This will pay dividends. This investment in northern China. How can it not? Like, I'm getting free infantry units deployed there every turn, above and beyond the ones that I'm building in Korea. I mean, that was another naval defeat for America, but it's got like the Japanese Imperial fleet all lit up, all damages, no fighters. Again, they're all off the map. Yeah, I think I just see bombers. So it has to run, and it's losing the ground war in China now, which is something that can't happen. You can see I'm still coming with the with the replacements. 3 carriers with 5 aircraft right there. So it's not like the Japanese could follow up that battle with anything meaningful. Buys them time, I guess, like 1 turn. It looks impressive, but like I said, strategically it doesn't change anything. That's the problem. Didn't even actually win territory by doing it. So that's the. If you look at the map on the top right, you can see like a lot of lost territory from the Japanese point of view. You can just do these air raids, fill gaps in the line. Next turn, I'll have tons of units, even more units in China, originating from Korea. I have to say though, the AI is pretty darn good for this version of A&A. I'm impressed. Like it's legit. You don't always see that, right? So I'm actually going to fast forward a few turns here because I mean this game's over. Um, with the huge disparity in income and the horrible strategic dilemma faced by Japan here, it's just a matter of time. So we'll jump ahead, and this will be, let's see, I think I jumped ahead until maybe like turn 30, and you can see what this eventually looks like if you play it out. There's no real point in playing it. Like, if you're involved in a head-to-head game, um, in person, opposed, uh, and you're America, like at what point would you try to convince the Japanese player that it's hopeless? It would seem kind of, um, oh, I don't know. You don't want to be a jerk and say that the game's over right after they take India. They'll probably just piss off the Japanese player. But I would argue that, yeah, it's probably true if they haven't done anything to deal with your navy and you hold all of the big islands that you see right there: Sumatra, Celebes, Philippines, Java. Um, but what about when you have the whole northern half of China? At that point, like at what point do they see that it's hopeless? Um, I would just constantly try and negotiate like a surrender, so you don't have to play this game out much beyond turn 12 or whatever. This is probably like around turn 36, so you can see the inevitable. Like, this is the inevitable result. You can just show them this video. This is what the game would look like if you chose to continue on trying to fight a hopeless battle. You get pushed all the way back into Malaya. Once the Americans have all of China, well, you can see here, yeah, Japan's economy is down to like 16. It will be taken down to about 11 or 8, and the Americans will have, with its allies, over 100. So you have like 10x uh, the ability to sustain losses. And that economy, too, soon becomes theoretical for the Japanese because you can eliminate it entirely with strategic bombing. And I didn't even start to do that in my example, but that would happen as well. So the Japanese would be making even less eventually, and it just, like in all of these games, that once the scale starts to tip, it just sort of accelerates as the disparity in income increases. So anyway, I hope you guys learned something from this. Enjoyed the gameplay. I always like playing this. Um, I would play Japan and try and figure out a counter to this strategy. But as it stands, I think like this ports of call ladder attack strategy is probably the best um, tool that you can use if you're a beginner against an experienced Japanese player of Axis and Allies Pacific 1940. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more content coming soon.